me. Do you mind if I join you? Are you sure you don't mind? You're absolutely sure I'm disturbing you?
My God. Yes. It would move me to tears if I still had tears to shed.
That was from the episode Heart of Ice from the series Batman, the animated series from September of 1992. And I thought it was a good way to start today's first podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mental Suppository. I'm Brett Herholtz.
I'm Jamie Billings.
I'm Cameron McLeod.
Hello there, folks. My name is Andrew Shanley, and like everybody else in this conversation, I'm a complete nerd.
So a little bit of personal history of the show from my perspective. In 1992 was around the time the second Batman movie came out that summer, and there was a lot of anticipation. I don't think people realize now how big the 1989 Batman was at the time. And so when the second movie came out in summer of 92, there was a lot of anticipation for it. And so somewhere around late August, I think it was Fox Kids was making an announcement of their fall lineup of shows that were going to be coming out that year. And one of them, and the way they announced it was they had two of the, I can remember vividly, these two kids from like their Fox Kids Club. One of them was like dressed like a big corporate executive with like, I think, pinstripe suit and false drawn on mustache. And he's making all these plans of like, they were, I guess, Tiny Toon Adventures was going to Fox 25 that year. So they were making like they were stealing it from the other network and, just really playing it up. And then at one point of the announcement, they said, we're also going to, I also want a show based on the Batman movie. And when they said it that way, I was immediately not impressed because I don't know if you remember, Jamie, most of the cartoons from the 80s that were either based on movies or television shows were very rarely that great. I don't know if you remember.
Anything that we saw from the 70s and 80s, they really tried to put in a real comic book aspect to it.
Yeah.
But as you were mentioning, the second Batman movie coming out,
yeah,
and what those Batman movies actually introduced to the general pop culture was the fact that Batman did in fact have a true dark side to him.
Yeah.
Before that, if you spoke of Batman to anyone else, they would immediately think of the campy Adam West 1960s Batman,
which I love, but
which I'm not disparaging it at all.
Absolutely.
Right. We'll get into how awesome that was later.
Exactly.
But right now it's just trying to see how. And then Christopher Nolan came by and made Batman even super dark.
Yeah.
So it's just that was the introduction of how Batman could have been really the man of the shadows.
So when they announced the cartoon came out, I was brought to like whatever they did, like the old Ghostbusters cartoon from '86, where it always felt, which was, a lot of people love that cartoon, but all the cartoons they did always felt like a bad cover of the movie, a cover version of the movie, where they would have voice actors trying to imitate the characters from the movie. And so I had this image of them doing like a Batman cartoon in the style of the Michael Keaton movies with him drawn like Michael Keaton with the dark Batman costume, and the plots rotating around like him doing battle with like Jack Nicholson's Joker and stuff like that. And it was just one of those things. It was kind of ingrained in me with the way they did like cartoons and adaptations of movies, but back in the 80s. So I was kind of very leery about that, because it's like we wanted another Batman movie. Didn't really want a cartoon.
That was also around the time, speaking of the campiness, that was also around the time that a lot of people were trying to introduce TV shows that had other superheroes. I also remember around that time, I think The Flash.
Yep.
They tried to produce the version of The Flash with John Wesley Shipp.
That's right.
Yeah, wow, that was a memory.
Okay, going back into my experience growing up, because obviously I was born in '74, and I grew up a lot with the '80s sentiment of commercial product that was pretty much given to us. A lot of cartoons when I was growing up were basically geared towards, we have a toy and we have a show. We had like G.I. Joe that was like that. He-Man was a lot like that.
But I had that kind of fear going into it, but then I began seeing pictures from the animated series that were coming out, and the drawing style was so much different than a lot of the superhero animated cartoons that were out at the time. And then my everything sort of, when I saw the first episode, all my fears were put to rest, because and what they did, and they did something very interesting that no other superhero show had really ever done, because I went back and watched like a couple of the old Batman cartoons from the 60s and 70s. And Paul Dini, Bruce Timm, and Alan Burnett and crew did something that was kind of set a tempo for the way the show was going to be. Instead of going with a character like the Joker, the Penguin, or the Riddler, or Catwoman, they immediately went with a character that was not necessarily as known to the public, with Man-Bat, with the episode On Leather Wings. And it was like one of these things.
That was an episode where a scientist.
Yes. Man-Bat was a character that was created by Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams in the 1970s. It was like a time when they were trying to make Batman a lot more dark and gritty, and with still having certain like horror and science fiction elements to it. But I mean, to go with it, and that's one of the things they did with the series, is to go with a character that wasn't as well known to the public, but make that character interesting, and make that performance, and just make it, make the B-list characters just as interesting as the A-list ones.
He was a little frightening too, if I remember.
Yes.
He actually grew in size and was like salivating and stuff. Yeah.
It was very much like a Wolfman sort of character, only he didn't change with the light of. I don't think he changed with the light of the moon. He just I don't
remember what it was. Yeah.
He injected himself with some sort of bat serum, and he became the Man-Bat.
And the one thing about Batman the animated series was it came out. I was in high school at the time. I think it came out in 91, correct?
92.
92. Okay, very close. I was like a senior in high school, 93. And it was really primarily something that was on during the college years of my life. And I just remember that would be like the one cartoon show I'd watch while I was doing homework, Yeah. And I think it was really reflected the different kind of style of animation, because it was much more serious. It was a much more direct kind of a show with more adult themes and stuff. There's a lot of stuff that they wrote that kind of went over the heads of kids, I think. And at the time, and this is another thing, at the time there was this real push to end Saturday morning cartoons. There was
I remember that.
There was a really big push to make more educational product for kids. And so Batman was one of those franchises that had been around for, like, at the time, like, what, 50 years almost?
About that, yeah.
Yeah, so 50 years of Batman in various forms, from the original serials that were produced in the 1940s to the campiness of the Adam West and Burt Ward series that they did. Not a lot of stuff during the 70s. Of course, we had, like, the Super Friends with Mego doing Batman and stuff like that.
You also had the Filmation animated series at that time that was co-current.
That was actually, the funny thing about that is I actually recently watched a couple episodes, because that is actually available on streaming now.
Yes.
You can actually watch a lot of that on Tubi, and I was like watching that, and the opening credits, like, literally will send somebody into an epileptic seizure. Yes. It's just red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. And I'm like, I don't even have that problem, but geez. When the series came out in 92, there was just a totally different tone to it. And it really showed that there was something new to it.
Also, one of these things, it was all in the sense that it immediately said it wasn't trying to copy the Tim Burton films. The series was going in a different direction, because a lot of the guys like Bruce Timm and Paul Dini were both comic book fans. And I guess Paul Dini has this like encyclopedic knowledge of Batman, and he wanted to bring that to the animated series and just make a show that was, it was, it was a little bit, maybe a little bit darker than a lot of the cartoons that were out but back then, but still have that sort of sense of light and humor that even the Neil Adams Batman comics had at the time.
Yeah, I remember a lot of the Joker episodes were a little bit more lighthearted than, say, the like the one-off characters like Clayface.
Yes, actually, that's something we were going to get to, is the idea that was a character that was not really a top tier character, and they made him interesting too.
And he had, I wish he had even more episodes. I think he only had 2 episodes. Clayface. It was
Yes, he had a handful.
a continuation episode. But no, I thought that they should have taken him off to his own other episodes.
Oh, I know. I mean, and that's
He was
that's the thing.
capable of so much.
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head. A lot of the things about the animated series is you could write, a Joker story. Most people could write a great Joker story in their sleep. I mean, it kind of writes themselves. But to take a character like Clayface, to take a character like Poison Ivy, or Mr. Freeze is a good example, and make those characters interesting. The Mad Hatter is another one. To take those characters and make them more interesting, now you've got a great show and you've got a lot more to work with.
Yeah, I liked the Batman animated series version of Mr. Freeze. Again, another person who they took in a very, very dark way.
And that origin for Mr. Freeze was actually created specifically for the show, because before that he was kind of a goofy one-off villain from like the comic books, and he didn't get the name Mr. Freeze till the Adam West series. But
He's almost as goofy as what was it, Eggman?
Yes. But with Mr. Freeze, they actually gave him a very sympathetic origin. He wasn't just a villain that was hell bent on just robbing or killing. He actually had a reason behind it. Is his the person he worked for had murdered his wife.
The reason behind it for him was love.
Exactly. And not only that,
the reason for all of his torment, the reason for all of his pain was all because of love for his wife.
And and also he was put in that state because of the character or the villain in the episode, who I think was actually voiced by Mark Hamill as well. That villain in that episode.
That dude. Is there anything he can't do?
Yeah, right. God love,
but also
Luke Skywalker.
That was the biggest surprise when I first found out, Mark Hamill was the voice of the Joker. I was like, holy mackerel, Luke Skywalker's the Joker.
I was like, I didn't know he acted in anything else.
The series came out in '92. There was just a totally different tone to it, and it really showed that there was something new to it.
I think what got me was the style. It was different from a lot of superhero cartoons. It was very stylishly done, and I probably already mentioned this before, but it was one of these things. It was very reminiscent of the old Max Fleischer Superman cartoons. It wasn't quite the same as it is, but just that very, very simplistic, easy to animate, but still it had that sort of feeling of a superhero cartoon.
I agree.
A serious cartooning, I suppose you could say it was.
One of the things that really kind of drew me to the show was because at the time I was totally into soundtracks and music, and I was really taken by the music that was inside this show. I mean, it was really well produced. You could tell that they really cared about the way it sounded, and one of the things that it was just, I was a big Tim Burton, Danny Elfman fan. I had a soundtrack. I would listen to soundtracks as a kid, and that was just one of those amazing soundtracks. You listen to the music, it sounds like the Tim Burton Batman soundtracks that Danny Elfman.
I like that, but I'm glad at the same time they didn't make it look like the Tim Burton films. This was Batman. This was the comic book Batman. This was, these were comic book fans.
Distinct.
Yeah. These were comic book fans making a cartoon show for comic book fans. That was a lot of. I mean, they just really delved into the whole canon or mythos of Batman, just bringing out characters like Rupert. What was his? Rupert Thorne, who was like a minor gangster from like the mid 1970s who really
Mhm.
showed up during like the Jokerfish storyline, and they made him they made him more of a main character in that series. Or Harvey Bullock, who was not really much of a main character, and they made him. He was a jerk, but he was one of these things. He was kind of like one of those. He was
Yeah.
like a good. He was still a good cop that Gordon trusted.
Well, that's the thing. I think that a lot of it also dealt with a lot of consequences. Like,
Yeah.
what Batman did and what the other characters did, there were consequences, not necessarily expected by the characters, but they really actually had a reflection upon the things that they were dealing with.
Right.
And the series had a great cast. I mean, that was a great cast of actors. I mean, right off the bat, you had Kevin Conroy, who played Batman, who was at the time, I think he was doing like radio spots, and he was a stage actor, and he just happened to, his agent happened to say, hey, do you want to audition for this?
And I think another way that introduced Batman to have a low grumbling voice, maybe that's where Christian Bale kind of took a little bit of
But it wasn't
inspiration
over the
because-
top, though.
No, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't over the top. His grumbly low voice that when he was Batman was appropriate, whereas Christian Bale
it seemed like he was trying a little too hard.
Right.
But
a little too much.
But I mean, it just like even there was like, people who were, voice actors who worked on the show, but they had a cast that was like a lot of people who were just like, TV and movie actors who were just sort of starting a second career as voice acting. I mean, you had not only Mark Hamill, you had Ron Perlman as Clayface. You had David Warner as Ra's al Ghul, and you had Adrienne Barbeau as Catwoman in it. Yep, and quite a few. Actually, there was one episode they had Adam West as the Gray Ghost in it.
So Gray Ghost was one of those shows that really the episodes that really kind of impacted me because it had the original actor, Adam West. I was a big fan of the original show as a kid.
Oh, me too.
And I thought that it was an interesting way because Adam West, through his career, had been really typecast as Batman, and he had to deal with that for a very long time. And so when they did that episode, kind of like, in his way. He played Simon Trent in the episode.
That was the name I'm trying to think of.
Yeah. And he teams up with Batman to find a mad bomber who is using the toys that he has left behind from the TV show because he's been selling them because that's the only way he can make his rent.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was another character created specifically for the show with the Mad Bomber, who was actually voiced by Bruce Timm. I always wondered if it was Mark Hamill who did the voice, and then I found out it was actually Bruce Timm who did it. But that was another really interesting character that they created specifically for the show that didn't have really any place in the any of the Batman characters that appeared in the comic books.
Yeah, I know. And the thing about that show is, and I thought that it was very interesting. At the end of the episode, obviously, people are going to see the show. He basically, Simon Trent becomes popular. The show goes back. It gets being released on DVD because he had all the original filmed shows of the Gray Ghost. And Bruce Wayne goes up and he's like, yeah, I was always a big fan of you, blah blah blah. And he says something to him as Batman that then he recognizes as Simon Trent, and he's like, you're a big fan.
That's right. There was that other part where the other part of the episode where they go into the Batcave, and there's that whole section of the Batcave that's dedicated to the Gray Ghost, and it's just like it was just like a really great part of the episode.
I thought that was great. You know what I would love to do at a convention is do like a cosplay of the Gray Ghost, but I think that's a little bit too. It's a little too obscure for people to recognize.
I don't know. Sometimes it's good to do the most obscure ones and make people wonder.
I mean,
because the real fans, because the real fans would notice it. It's funny because Adam West doesn't play it in a way that's like over the top, campy, goofy. It actually has a lot of heart to the performance, and it's a great episode.
Nice.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just the other thing about the series I noticed watching the older Batman animations from the 60s and 70s is a lot of the characters
ones.
Yeah, the characters created specifically for the shows in those series were never that great. They were always very flat. But the Batman animated series was one of those series where a lot of the characters created specifically for the show were just as interesting as the characters that were already established, like Harley Quinn, who's become one of the most
popular ones.
exactly, and that was
Yeah, I mean, it's the number one cosplay. Apparently, every girl has to do at a convention,
right.
and that's cool. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, like Deadpool would be the male version of that,
Right.
but
Well, honestly, I remember years ago in college, and this is long before, like cosplay was had become as I don't want to say mainstream because I feel like that puts a stigma on it.
Mhm.
It's like, it's become more readily done and readily accepted, and it's become
Yeah.
its own art form.
Mhm.
But I remember a fellow student who had done a really great Harley Quinn costume for one of the college costume parties. I mean, this was the
Oh,
original
yeah.
Harley Quinn in the Harlequin get up, and
Yep.
this was years before people had really like latched on and like kind of
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah.
gravitated towards that character. As a character,
Hell yeah.
Iconic,
that was a character that was created as she was listed as the Joker's henchwench in the first script. She didn't even have a name at that time, and and I guess the one of the guys, it was either Paul Dini or Bruce Timm, who was working on the series, had loved Arlene Sorkin, who had done this sort of fantasy scene in a soap opera, and she did the Harley Quinn voice, and he sort of based that whole character around that voice.
Nice.
And they
Wow.
loved the performance so much they just brought the character back for another more and more episodes. But there were other characters that were just as interesting. Like there was an episode with a character called Baby Doll, which was all about a child actress who has had that rare
Yes.
disease where they don't grow
Yeah,
up,
she
so
didn't, she didn't grow up older, and
Yeah.
and she was really vile too, if I recall.
she was, but it was like the end of the episode. They actually make you feel sorry for the character, and it was just such a great thing. And actually, they had Robbie Riscovson Oliver do a bit part on the episode too, as a little bit nod to former child actors. And the funniest thing is they don't have him play the actor who Baby Doll hates, the cousin who comes in and ruins the show for her. Sort of like a cousin Oliver. They actually have him play a totally different character in the episode.
And also they had I remember a couple episodes they had with Crocodile. Was that his
Killer
name?
Croc.
Yeah, Killer Croc.
And that was a
Well,
character that was only created like in the 1980s. I mean, they were actually using characters that were, they were still using characters that were not as, like I said, not as well known, but made them great characters. Like Killer Croc, the ventriloquist, which was a character I think only debuted like in '89, a few years before the series started.
Yeah, because they had the typical Penguin, Two-Face.
Yep. And those they had some great
those-
actors doing those voices and some great stories.
Yeah, I always really loved the secondary characters that they only did 1 or 2 episodes of.
I know. Well, there was a whole
Those
episode.
those episodes seemed to have a lot more depth.
Yeah. Well, there was a whole episode where they didn't have a specific villain, but it was all about, human trafficking, where Batman goes underground to, break up this human trafficking league. And they have this kind of, boss hog sort of character who's like, looking over the workers. It's like just this vile character. And he's not really a rogues gallery villain or anything like that. But he's, it still makes it an interesting episode because it's, a sort of a real life sort of thing where, Batman's breaking up this, this ring that is making people work again, do,
Against their will, whatever.
yeah, work,
right?
Working against their will.
Huh.
The
Yeah,
other episode I remember
exactly.
really liking was the one that got away where it's like the Joker, Poison Ivy, Two-Face, and Killer Croc all dishing about and the Penguin. And people have got
That was a
actually
good one.
Paul Williams, who did a lot of great music and wrote Rainbow Connection. And he did a bit of acting, did the voice of the Penguin, and he just didn't really do a Burgess Meredith or a Danny DeVito. He kind of did a very eloquent version of the Penguin. And so they're all like dishing about how they tried to catch Batman. And of course, the Joker's almost got him, but he ends up getting Catwoman, and which they end up finding. But the great part about the episode was the part, it's like, everybody's like, who wants to go next? And Killer Croc's like, me! And starts telling his story. And it's like the lamest story in the world. And he goes, and then I hit him with a rock. And they're all just kind of
I
look
think
at him
that's
just
the
completely
closest. I
straight-faced.
think I think that's the
Yeah.
closest we're ever gonna get to seeing the Legion of Doom in that show.
Yeah.
All you need is Lex Luthor in that show, that episode. Then you'd have the Legion of Doom. That'd be funny.
It was a very big run. Oh, that was another good casting was Clancy Brown as Lex Luthor. I think he was probably
Mm,
his voice would just, that's all I can think of now is the character. Because there was
yeah.
another episode where he switches brains with the Wally West Flash, and he thinks he's going to finally get one. I goes, I can finally see who the Flash looks like. Pulls the mask off, and then goes, I have no idea who this is. It's
Yeah.
a bits of humor, that these are comic book fans.
Yes, totally. And there was just lots of little references to little things. Maybe they weren't able to condense all of the stories into a
Right.
30-minute episode because that's obviously an issue for a lot of comics because,
Yeah.
stories in comics they have, I don't know, it's like the official, it's like 6-panel or 7-panel.
Give or take,
panel,
unless you're Frank
usually.
Miller and you put like 12 panels per page.
Well, if you're Frank Miller, you pretty much have the authority to do whatever the heck you want, regardless.
Pretty much so, yeah.
But I mean, he can release like a 40 panel if he wants to. But
Exactly.
so they have to obviously be creative about how they edit it down and how they put
Right.
things together. And that's one of the things that makes that show interesting is that
And
they
they-
actually were able to condense it all and make it
They
cohesive.
did a mix of like original stories, but also the ones they did that were adaptations of stories, like the Demon's Quest
Yep.
with Ra's al Ghul, and it's pronounced, kids,
Yep.
Ra's al Ghul, and in that one they just that was taken from the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams saga, which introduces Ra's al Ghul, who was basically a James Bond villain for the time for Batman, and
Yeah.
he was him and-
Absolutely.
I think probably still next to like say the Penguin and the Riddler, one of my favorite Batman villains.
Oh yeah,
Is-
absolutely.
One that never really got used much in the comics, and again, making the and it wasn't because he was a lame character like Mr. Freeze was. He was actually an interesting villain, but he just never got. I don't know if he got as used as much in the 80s. I feel like it was after the animated series that they started like utilizing the character more in the comics. And then there's Bane, who just was released, was a character that just came out like maybe a year or two before the animated series came out. And that was the whole breaking of the Batman. But they did it, but they ended up doing the episode in a way where it just like you got like immediate fan satisfaction where he didn't break Batman, but Batman broke him.
So I'm just gonna. I've when this show aired, I was not even born yet. 6 years before I was born. So not to make everyone old here, but
Oh, don't worry about it.
But
No, we're old. It's okay.
but even just from what you guys have talked about and what I've known about the series and just Batman as a character and his role in the DC universe, in his comics, all that. I have read a few comics, but it seems like this show, what you guys are getting, this is like kind of this was the start of what we are seeing now with like Marvel Cinematic Universe and all that stuff.
It really kind of
the
is,
characters, creating the characters that you care about, like they're all flawed in their own way. But you care about them, right? They're minor characters, but
I mean that's it. They actually played the long instead of like saying, okay, we've got a superhero universe. Here you go. They played a long game, sort of the way the MCU does now, where they started out with Batman the Animated Series as the first one, and even in that, they sort of slowly introduced a few of the other DC characters, like Zatanna, who is a magician who has kind of this universe has kind of a little bit of a past with Batman / Bruce Wayne, who studied under her father, so. You started off with that show, and then they sort of led into like the Superman animated series, and that sort of
I was just going to say that too. Was brought by the same group of animators, so it had the same animation style.
It's similar, but they went in a different way. Whereas Batman had sort of the Dark Deco or Art Deco look, they went more for a futuristic sort of what I guess it's called Ocean Deco or Sea Deco. I forget. Somebody can correct me, but they went. But it had that.
Someone will. It's the internet.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
It's the beauty of the internet.
But they created a similar style to it, but it actually had more. It looked a little more futuristic than the Gotham City, which was in the Batman animated series, which was very 1930s looking. Whereas this one, it looked like.
I remember that Superman one in the future with had Brainiac.
Yes.
It was a very, and Supergirl is very futuristic looking, same animation style,
Yep.
but also it didn't have the same warmth of character development that I'd say the Batman had.
No, it didn't. It was probably, I feel like it was probably one of the best Superman adaptations that's been out since the Christopher Reeves movies. But I definitely felt a little, like you said, like with the Batman the animated series, it was definitely more of a warmth. There's more of a, but then they ended up linking the two universes together when they actually did a crossover movie that was, it should have been a blueprint of how the Batman Superman movies should have been, but I digress.
Right, but that's a whole different
However,
ball field.
They actually, in the first, I think the first or second, the first or second episode of Superman, I think it's Martha Kent's mentioning, I think he's getting some costume ready. She said something to the effect of like, well, I don't want you to be like that lunatic in Gotham. So that nice little nod to.
No, but I think, Cameron really hit it on the head with not really knowing the series that we're talking about, but the way that we're talking about it is definitely the introduction of how Batman became the current dark figure that we know him as today. Also, I think that kind of brings into how we know the Joker as being, that's how he's evolved into being as dark as he is now, because you see how the Joker was from Cesar Romero, where he's, he didn't seem like he was that threatening. He was maniacal, crazy, and he'd plan tricks, and he'd do, he was a Joker.
Right.
But it didn't really seem that threatening. Then comes Jack Nicholson, and he makes the Joker a little bit more threatening, and then a little bit more
you electrocute somebody with a hand buzzer.
Now he's more homicidal. And then, Joker evolves now to which you think that the best Joker would be, I don't know, getting up to Joaquin Phoenix's Joker
I still feel good. For my money, I still feel like Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy are the best Joker Batman team, because it's just like they took it. They didn't try to make the stories real. They knew this was an animated series. They knew they were comic book fans, and they were making this series for comic book fans. And they really dug deep into Batman lore when it came to not just sticking to the movies. They sort of made their own version of their universe, but they used elements from like past Batman stories, like the Laughing Fish episode, which was a combination of the Laughing Fish comic story from the 70s, as well as an earlier one, which actually there's a scene with the Joker, in front of a shark and saying, notice the resemblance, Batman. That was actually from two different stories, but it was probably still one of my favorite ones, because it's like you have it's really kind of dark, because he's basically it just shows how insane the Joker is, because he wants to copyright these fish because they have their smile on them, and the poor copyright clerk is just like, or the poor notary or whatever he is, it's just where he's like, I can't, fish are a natural resource. And the Joker is just of course flies off the handle. He goes, Colonel Sanders got his chicken, they don't even have his mustache. And then basically he threatens to kill the guy on TV if he doesn't give him rights to these fish. And I think it's also the very first episode that really makes Harley Quinn like a noticeable character in it, because there's the great scene where there's like the television commercial for the Joker fish, and with Harley Quinn dressed as the mom, and you got the Joker's two henchmen dressed as the kids, and the Joker coming, and the Joker coming in as the Gordon fisherman with like these this bag of fish. Like, what am in the Harley Quinn saying? What am I going to feed my family tonight? Yar, you can feed them Joker fish. And you find out she can't stand. She's allergic to fish. So he's trying to make her eat it. It's like, yummy, yummy, eat it. It's like, but Mr. J, I'm allergic to fish.
This is what you're gonna do.
Also, didn't this Batman series, didn't it bring in Nightwing?
Yes, actually, in the I think the third or fourth season.
It introduced Nightwing?
No, that was actually created for the comic books, but they decided to bring him into the series. And actually, that was another thing about the series, is it was kind of a good thing they sort of introduced Robin at a later stage of his when he'd gone off to college. I
Yeah,
think
because
some
it
of
was
it,
sort of like a different. They branched off in a certain
Yeah.
way
So they
instead
went
of
with they went with that version later. Like it was actually from the Neil Adams books when they wanted to make Batman more of a focus. They sort of sent Robin off to college, and so he would come back every few stories. And I think they did the same thing with the series. But the Lauren Lester, who did the voice of Robin and later Nightwing, did a great job with the character, making him still kind of more of a Spider-Man sort of a version of Robin, where he's not as dark as Batman. He's still a little bit, jokey, but not in the Burt Ward sort of holy this or that sort of way.
Right.
yeah.
But there was a great episode where it goes into his origin, the guy who killed his parents, as part of their circus performance. And, Robin comes close to almost killing the guy. And then, Batman kind of stops him. And that's another great episode that makes really, the Robin Dick Grayson character really shines in. And it's really kind of a example of how good these writers
And again, this is an animated show that's given you more depth of character.
Right, making these characters seem more human, so you can like them more and relate to them a little bit more. That's what I'm picking up so far.
I think that even if you take a look at like the impact of that show, there's also, and this is just another, I consider this part of the extension of it, the movie Mask of the Phantasm, which
I just recently rewatched that. I did like a really long rewatch of the entire animated series, the entire DC animated universe from Batman the Animated Series till Justice League Unlimited. And that, one of the things I rewatched recently, because it was available on Netflix, was Batman Mask of the Phantasm. I'm glad you brought that up, because it was one I didn't appreciate as much at the time, because you wanted another Tim Burton Batman film. But seeing it now, I watching that one, and even the one with Mr. Freeze and Mystery of the Batwoman, they're still a lot better than a lot of the Batman movies that have come out in the last 15 or 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's the uniqueness about that type of animation and what they did. They really achieved something with that show, and they really created something that was unique and special, that people can really look back on. And another thing too is, you watch that show today, and it's timeless. It's one of those shows that you watch today, and you're like, this could be produced today, and no one would even know the difference.
And I think a lot of that helped by going with a retro style, because it didn't immediately date it in the 1990s. You can watch a lot of animated series from the 90s, even like Tiny Toons, and it's very stuck in the time. Whereas, you watch Batman the Animated Series, and they went with that very 1939s look, and you can still enjoy it.
The Art Deco style
or Dark Deco, as they called it.
Yes, and the way that people were dressed and everything else like that. It was just brilliant. Is that me pinging?
Don't worry, one of us is pinging. Don't worry about it. Bing. But I mean, it was just that mix of artwork and great voice casting and great writing. I mean, writers who had worked in animation were now getting their dues as creators.
Mm-hmm.
So
there we go.
Actually, it's funny. I was just recently watching Batman Brave and the Bold, an episode that was written by Paul Dini. He did one of the Batmite episodes, and it was hysterical, because it's Paul Rubens as Batmite, just being just a complete pain in the ass. And just,
that's the thing.
And doing it a lot better than the Filmation one, which was just obnoxious. This is a way you can take a character and be annoying, but still enjoy it, because there's like a nod to an old Daffy Duck cartoon in the middle of that cartoon, the Duck Twaithy one. Oh, which it's like, Dick, what's his name? Daffy Duck saying, oh, 88 fingers, and you have Batmite doing that with all the different Batman villains, and it's hysterical. And I think as far as animated series go, that one Brave and the Bold is like a close second to, in my books, to the original Batman animated series. Is a really well done animated series, but in a totally different direction. Whereas the Batman the Animated Series went in like the Neil Adams, Dennis O'Neil 70s, 80s sort of Batman that wasn't entire. It was darker, but it wasn't entirely dark. There was still a lot of humor to it, and that was the way with Batman the Animated Series. You had scenes with like Alfred when they're in the Batcave, and he throws Joker fish on the table, and Alfred says, "Dining in tonight, I see, sir." That was very much kind of inspired by the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns Alfred, who's a bit, or even actually Batman Year One, where Alfred's a bit more, not snide, but a bit, a bit more, has a bit more of a rapier wit with his comments.
Yeah.
Even the first one, the one with Man Bat, he makes some comments like, "Oh, I thought it was you throwing men off buildings," and he says, "I only toss butlers, Alfred." And it was a mix of good writing, good acting, and good animation. And I actually found out later on that a lot of the animation was outsourced, because honestly, I don't think they could have kept up with that sort of season without outsourcing the animation to like Japan or Korea. And actually, the one of the companies that did the Mr. Freeze episode actually went bankrupt, because they did so much extra detail to like the look of the helmet, like the shine on the helmet.
Yeah,
something
putting
like
in
that.
the shine and everything. Yeah,
Wow.
making it like a
Damn.
transparent shine. Yeah.
And I think that the other thing too about that is that the DC animated, the Batman animated series
Yeah.
really kind of set the tone for the whole DC universe movies that they did following that. And really tell you the truth, if you look at the artwork and the art style that they're using, it's a lot of that. It just hasn't changed. I mean, that's the unique. It's become the standard for the DC universe.
Absolutely, and there's some that kind of deviate from it, but there are, Bruce Timm's still doing a lot of like DC animations. I mean, and so they've been hit and miss. I mean, I really wanted to like The Killing Joke, but I was just kind of disappointed, because you had Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, and it's like that whole, and Tara Strong doing Batgirl, and I mean, but that whole preamble before the actual story, it just wasn't necessary, because you had a really good story right there. But they've also done productions like Dark Knight Returns, which was actually not bad. It was actually a decent version of the Dark Knight Returns. The only complaint I had is they eliminated Batman's inner monologue from the book, and I thought that kind of took a little bit away from it. And it was an interesting casting too. Again, they've always been, I feel like, you want to hear Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill and these people, and some of them have passed away now, but you want to hear them as Batman and the Joker. But I can understand from a producer or director or a voice director's point of view, you want to cast the right people for the role. So it was interesting hearing Peter Weller and the actor from Person of Interest, I think Michael Emerson, as the Joker, and he made a very interesting Joker. And they actually had a guy who played Quentin Collins on Dark Shadows as Commissioner Gordon, and his name's skipping me right now.
I would probably just like take it aside to all that, and obviously take a look at some of the other DC movies that they've done. Particularly Red Sun was one that I saw recently.
Oh, I haven't seen that one yet.
That's a very interesting different take of the Bat story. Obviously, it's a different take on Superman as well, because instead of being an American story, it's a Russian story. And one of the things that really got me was that when you have the animated series in the 90s that kind of pushed that envelope and had that style, they were able to create these alternate views of these acts of these characters. And I think that it's not the greatest.
Elseworld.
Yeah, the Elseworld.
Yep, I remember those. And actually, a professor of mine wrote an Elseworld story. My professor Mark Neese wrote Batman Viking Prince, and I have a signed copy of it. So,
oh wow!
And nice. I found out he actually wasn't allowed to have Batman say "I'm Batman" in the comic book, because that was that phrase was actually owned by whoever the writer was for the '89 Batman movie.
Yeah, it's funny how copyright laws work.
I know, right? Actually, another great DC movie I thought was the adaptation they did of Darwin Cook's New Frontier. And little did I know, I never knew all these years that Darwin Cook was the designer for the opening credits of Batman Beyond. Another great series. I mean, that was another one that had a great line in it when supposedly somebody was trying to get into Bruce Wayne's head, and Terry McGinnis is saying, how did you know it wasn't you. And he says, he kept on calling me Bruce. And that's not who I call myself. And he's like, who do you, oh, I see. But that's me now. And he goes, tell that to my subconscious. And it was
the
just
other
like,
thing too,
it was just a great
I would
line.
yeah, I would also probably also say that, one of the things that the animated series did was they also pushed the boundaries for Marvel as well. If you look at
Yep.
like the X-Men animated series
Yeah.
from the 90s, it was unique in that respect as well. They had character development, they had a storyline, even other shows that they did like Teen Titans,
Right.
And
Well, what
stuff.
made it
It had
actually
an
more,
impact.
what was interesting is the difference between the Batman animated series and the X-Men series is the X-Men series went with like the look of the comic book of the time, whereas Batman the Batman series went with a very unique look that looked like maybe could be the 70s or the 80s Batman, the blue and the gray.
Yeah.
But artist, I believe it was Kevin Nolan, did the character designs for it. He did a lot of comic work, and it's like if you look at his original character designs, there's some deviations. Like he made the Batman's cape look really weird. People can Google search Kevin Nolan Batman the animated series and see it, but it's all there. It's like it looks very much like the way the series would eventually look in its last season on with the Batman Adventures in like 98, 99.
Yeah.
So it eventually, when they kind of like streamlined it and made it sort of fit into the whole continuity with Superman the animated series.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the brilliance of just how they did it, and honestly, you guys pretty much hit it all on the head. You really did. Everything was. I would say I agree with you guys 100%.
Yeah.
The show had a really big impact, and it was just brilliant the way they did it all. So
it was a comic book show for comic book fans.
It
who
was.
just understood the characters.
And I think that really started the whole. I think, really, tell you the truth, our generation, because obviously now being a nerd and being like into that sort of stuff is not as unpopular as it was. The fact that show is still around and has built up a fan base and continues to build a fan base to this day, really, I think it's a testament to just how people are still just into that sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just, but I feel like DC's done a great job with animation. Movies have been hit or miss, but they're animated. And I'll say it again. I feel like, people usually point to the MCU as the beginning of world building. And I have to disagree. It was actually the DC animated universe under Alan Burnett and Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, starting with Batman the animated series and ending with Justice League Unlimited. And Justice League Unlimited sort of did like what they did with the Batman animated series, introducing the lesser known villains and making them interesting, creating characters for the series and making them interesting, but actually bringing in a lot of the lesser known heroes from the DC universe, bringing in the Question,
absolutely.
Making the Green Arrow. Yes. The Green Arrow was always a favorite character of mine, but making him even more interesting, where he was sort of like the antithesis of, well, he was very similar to Batman, but very different personality wise, where he's more of these, they're both millionaires, they both dedicated their life to fighting crime, but he sees himself as more the urban hunter, whereas Batman's more the Dark Knight detective. And there's that great scene where they're fighting this unstoppable villain and all the other top tier heroes are gone, and Green Arrow's like, get ready to face the Crimson, what was it, like the Crimson Justice and my former sidekick speak.
I was about to say, you're gonna say the Crimson Chin from the Fairly Odd Parents.
No,
my kids watch that. My God, that show.
The Crimson Avenger. That was
the Crimson. Okay, there you go.
I had to Google search that at one point because he was like one of those really. I didn't know if he was like a Charlton Comics or just like he was like kind of one of those really lesser known DC villains. But I thought DC heroes. I mean, but I thought that's great. I'm glad they would bringing in these characters and and making them interesting. And actually, it just what was started in Batman the Animated Series with the stories continued with Justice League Unlimited. One of my favorite episodes was the one where Morgan Le Fay makes Batman, Superman, Green Lantern all kids. And it's like, and just the whole thing of suddenly Wonder Woman's crush on Batman comes out, and Superman's completely oblivious to it. And apparently Green Lantern used to be have bad eyesight as a kid. Yeah, but
That reminds
Batman's
me of that Star Trek episode in Star Trek Next Generation where Captain Picard and the away team end up all being kids, and they have to fight against the Ferengi and save the ship. He's like, "I want to see my daddy now." I'm like,
well, what's funny is Batman in that episode just acts like a mini version of Batman.
"Oh
And
yeah,
just like it's like Wonder Woman saying, "You okay, big guy?" Goes, "Let go of me," and just kind of pulls his cape down and walks and sulks off.
yep,
And
sounds about right."
Another great line is like, Wonder Woman decides to go with, go team up and go with Batman inside, and Superman's like, "What's going on?" And Green Lantern's like, "For a guy with X-ray vision, you're blind." But then it delivers a real punch of a line at the end of the episode where Wonder Woman says, "Well, it was nice to be a kid, even for a little while." And Batman says, "The last time I was a kid, I was 6 years old, or I was 10 years old."
Oh,
And you're just like,
wow.
I mean, honestly, that was one of the things I thought was, bringing it back. It was just good animating, good writing, and people who just understood the characters and weren't just doing it to put out action figures. Because this was also coming off the heels of the whole toy show era of the 1980s, where a lot of the shows were done. Whereas these were also guys who had worked on stuff like programs like the Super Friends or worked for Filmation, and were just very.
This was sort of like the reintroduction to what good animation could be like, instead of having it be the choppy, cookie cutter animation that we saw in a lot of our cartoons growing up. That's why when Animaniacs and Batman animated series came around, we were more interested in them, because there was more flow to the animation, where it wasn't so choppy and cut in, or stale and stagnant, where it would just be a steady frame of someone and just their mouth moving. They put
exactly
more motion. They put more motion into the animation, and that's why I think really drew me to wanting to watch it.
Oh yeah, me too. And not only that, like I said, the writing. These were guys who had worked on the Super Friends, who found they were just very frustrated because they weren't allowed to have the superheroes act super heroic. You couldn't really have somebody shoot at somebody. You could really have, a character punch anybody. If you watch an old episode of He-Man, the Masters of the Universe, he basically, if a character attacks him, he just throws the character.
Whoa.
Yeah, exactly. He just throws the bad guy. But in this, I mean, they didn't have him necessarily shoot a person. I mean, there was an interview with Mark Hamill. He's asking, fans ask me, why didn't the Joker kill anybody? He's just like, standards and practices. And you still had that in the 1990s. I mean, they were allowed to do a lot more than they were in the 80s as far as what could and could not be done in the show. And keep in mind, this was on a weekday afternoon, and it was still a relatively dark cartoon for a weekday afternoon, but it was just so well done and so well put together.
Right, thought out.
And so well acted.
Right,
and like I said, getting back to the characters, I mean, another favorite of mine was Ra's al Ghul, who's never really made much of headway. He was in Batman Begins, but this was the first time they really introduced the character in any format, and they got a great actor to play him, do the voice in the guise of David Warner, who had done a lot of a lot of radio, had done a lot of film, and just he was like one of these like really great British actors who just gave, that's who I imagine when I hear the voice of Ra's al Ghul. I don't imagine Liam Neeson. I remember
Liam Neeson.
I imagine David Warner's voice saying, "You win this round, detective."
Liam Neeson.
Good old
Hey,
Qui-Gon Jinn.
Yep.
But I mean,
totally.
The writing never. I feel like the writing, you're like any long series. You had episodes that weren't as great, episodes that were fantastic.
Yeah.
It was like, but I mean, for the most part, I mean, even going back and watching Batman the Animated Series, both the first episode of the series and the very last episode, which you find out Two-Face has developed a third personality, are great episodes.
Yes.
And it was, like, it's like, wow, what a way to end the series on. Just,
Yeah, it was a great way. It had a great run. How long was that show on for? It was about
the original Batman the Animated Series was on from like 92 to 98. And I think
that was on for a while.
But I think the whole run of the DC that version of the DC animated universe went from like 92 to like 2006 maybe.
Yeah. It was on for a while. It was a real hallmark. I mean, it was like Iron Man for the
That's
DC animated
that's
universe.
exactly it. And I think,
Yeah.
like I said, they played a long game where they started, and I don't think
Mhm.
they set out to create a sort of a television universe or an animated
Yeah.
universe. It just started out wanting to make a really great Batman cartoon, and then it sort of spawned to
Yeah.
doing the Adventures of Superman, then Batman Beyond, then the
Exactly.
Justice League, then Justice League Unlimited, and
Hmm.
as well as the movies. And we were talking about earlier Batman Mask of the Phantasm, and I think I started to
Yes.
mention that when I wasn't completely excited when it first came out because I wanted another Michael Keaton Batman film, which again
Hmm.
was something people criticized at the time because of Michael Keaton, but ended up
Yeah.
now they see him as the ultimate Batman. But it was one of these films I ended up seeing it again. It's like that was really good. It was really well written, really well voiced, and
Yep.
honestly, it was just and you have this really interesting origin story to the Joker. And if
Yep.
people want to say, I'm giving away spoilers, the movie's been out since 1994. If you haven't seen it already, get over it.
I mean, pretty much. This show is going to be basically us spoiling everything. We should call
Oh
this
gosh,
show
yeah,
"Spoiler Alert."
yeah,
I mean,
the mental spoiler.
the mental
But
spoiler alert.
I mean, it was just it's goes back to just really putting together a really good show that just stood you know far above a lot of the superhero shows that came out before that. And it
Yeah.
just and there were a few, and like I said, there were a few good ones. I went back and rewatched that Superman series Ruby Spears put out back in '87. And it was halfway decent. It was around, it was what it was. It was kind
Yeah.
of reminded me of the X-Men, Pride of the X-Men, that came out around the same time.
I mean, Superman wasn't exactly in the best of positions at that moment. I
No, it
mean,
wasn't.
you saw Superman 4, right? Those flying effects looked like
Oh gosh.
garbage.
Well, so
I mean, it was a Glowing Globus production. I
exactly.
mean,
So I think
at
that
least you should have heard what their ideas for doing
oh
Spider-Man was going to be. Holy
I don't even
crap.
want to
Oh.
know. You got the
All right,
word
there's a
crap
great
right.
documentary you got to take a look at if you're a Glowing Globus fan. It's called it's called The Electric Boogaloo: The Wild
Oh,
World
I
of
watched
Canon
that. That
Films.
was that was really fantastic. That was just like so.
And
I
true
think I
to
might have. Yeah.
form, I mean, honestly, like holy crap, like Canon Films has had such a impact on our generation. Like holy crap, like
But it's interesting you bring up the Superman. It's interesting you bring up the Superman films because at that point in '96, when the Adventures
yeah.
of Superman came out, it was sort of the opposite of when Batman the Animated Series came out, where they'd already had
Mm-hmm.
they didn't really do an origin story in the first episode of Batman because you'd already had the '89 movie a couple years later, a couple of years earlier, I mean, and it was like, what's the point? Whereas the Adventures of
Yeah.
Superman, they actually did an origin story that made it it made it was it was actually very well done, where it added a little bit of
I think
mystery, and
that
it added a little bit of
yeah,
action
I
and
think
mystery,
it.
and yeah.
Mm-hmm. No,
Oh,
I mean, I would
yeah.
say that like I'm sorry,
Oh, that's
cutting you off.
okay.
But I would say the reason why I think the reason focused on a lot of the animation was that at that time, like the focus of making the movies that they were making, they weren't doing so well.
Right.
So they decided to go with animation instead of doing the major motion picture movies because at the time you had Schumacher doing Batman Forever and then
Yep.
Batman and Robin. We all know how great that movie ended up.
Yep.
And
Well, they
then
ended
there
up
was
actually putting off doing the Mr. Freeze animation for a year because
yeah.
Batman and Robin bombed. So and
Oh, that
Sub-Zero was
was
a infinitely better movie and infinitely
yeah,
better acted.
yeah. I mean, they also it was also they were doing Superman. They were planning on doing Superman reboot.
Oh, yep. Superman Lives with Nicolas Cage is
Superman Lives.
Superman
There it is.
with
And
which actually I ended up reading a little bit of Kevin Smith's script. It wasn't awful, but I have a feeling he was up against, it sounds like he was up against a lot. People just like
yeah,
like really hammering their ideas they wanted into the script. And this is a guy who wrote a really good run on the Green Arrow for DC.
Hollywood has a very bad tendency to take something that's really good and ruining it with a lot of money.
Yeah,
That's just
that's
kind of how it is. I mean, they'll spend like, oh, the movie costs like 150, $200 million. It's going to be good. People are going to
yeah.
go see it. No.
No,
Doesn't work that
you can't.
way.
You just can't. You just can't guess what the trend's going to be.
Exactly. I
You know,
mean, just tons. I mean, you take a look at like all the stuff that's really made a big impact. A lot of people didn't think Star Trek was going to be a big
Nope.
thing. Nobody thought that Star Wars was going to be a big thing.
Doctor Who
Nobody
was an
thought that
educational show,
Doctor Who was like educational show. They were
but
like,
the
hey,
Daleks changed that.
history."
It's
Oh my God,
it's very much
that's
this was a
It was a hit.
it-
It was a hit. It was
Yep.
it was a ball in the park. It was a swing. It was a hit. It made it popular and made people want to go see it.
Right.
So
and that was the
I think
same-
that's all I can really
yeah.
say on this.
I want to talk
Kevin's
about
here.
Cameron. Oh,
So
kidding.
all right, so
All right,
where is it?
let's figure this out.
Oh.
Trying to figure this out.
You there, Kevin? Oh, let's wait till he's. I think he's on. I think you're on mute right now. So.
I am here.
Oh, you are. There you are, Kevin.
I'm
Ah,
on mute. Hey, look at that.
Technology,
Oh, nice.
yay.
Somebody's got a fucking green screen but me. Real nice.
Don't worry about it. Most of this is going to be audio, anyways. We might put up a video piece of it, but
I have a green screen of a baby car seat in a car
oh, nice.
in an abandoned parking lot.
Bat baby.
You know what's weird? What I was trying to do is my phone, my car actually has Zoom in it. So I stopped thinking, okay, I might be able to link this up through my car, and I can actually set this down because unfortunately, the script is also on my phone.
Oh, okay.
So if you give me just a second here,
Yeah,
I might be
take your
able
time.
to get it to work. It's saying that it is. I wonder if I have to have my car turned off. Trying to figure that out. Well, that wouldn't make sense because I don't have a camera in my car. So I think what it was just telling me that the audio from my Zoom meeting is going through my phone, which
Oh,
is
okay.
fine. Let me just see if I can bring the script up on the iPad because I also brought the iPad with me. It just doesn't really have. Yeah, it doesn't really have anything on it except music stuff. So let me see if I still have Dropbox on it. I just saved it to Dropbox, and that'll.
Oh, okay. If need be, I
that'll
could probably send it to you.
Oh no, I have it on my
Oh, okay.
on my phone, but I don't know how else to get it to. Ah, okay. Hang on a second. I think I can AirDrop it to myself. Hold on.
Oh, okay, okay.
That should be fun. Let's see. Okay. How is everybody?
Oh, doing good. How about yourself?
Good. Just you two, huh?
Yeah, for now, I'm going to actually be recording with Andrew later, and we're going to insert his talk into the discussion, via technology.
Okay. Oh, let me make sure I open the right. Let me make sure I open the right one.
Coughing.
Wait, that is not the right one. That's the one you sent the wrong one. Hold on, I've got it.
I think
It's
it's the
coming.
second.
Yeah, I've got it now. All right. This is the first time it was sent through Google Drive. Second time it was attached.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so now let me see if I can AirDrop it. Because I don't think I even have to have I don't think I even have to have signal to do that. AirDrop. Well, all right, guys. Oh, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry. I sound like an old guy.
We
There
know
it
we know the feeling.
Everyone. There we go. Okay, let me try it now. It wasn't turned on. Got it. All right.
Okay, cool.
And it's sending. And open with Chrome. See if that works. Personal hotspot. All right. I have it.
Oh, cool.
All right. So let me go back to the video.
All right.
There we are. Let me set this in a way that is aesthetically pleasing.
All right.
All right. I think we're good.
Okay. What I'll probably do is introduce you and do like a little bit of a lead into like what we're doing, what the script's about. We'll just play this like it's totally organic.
Okay. Connection is good.
Okay, good.
No, connection is good.
Yep, it's fine.
Okay. I can only
Yeah,
see
you know. Yeah, no,
It's some-
it's pandemic. Who knows?
There you are.
There we go.
Okay.
All right. Everybody ready, or
Yeah.
Kevin, you all set?
I am all set.
Okay, cool. So we're going. Okay, so I'll start. So now we're going to introduce the fourth member of our merry little band, Kevin Barbary, who's joining us. Those of you who
From the
don't-
Batmobile.
He is joining us from the Batmobile.
Yes.
Those of you who don't know Kevin, he's a professional voice actor. He's done television and radio, and he's also does one of the best Christopher Walken and Jeff Goldblum impersonations I know of,
Oh,
And Sean
thank
Connery.
you. Thank
and of course
you.
Sean.
Oh,
Connery.
R.I.P. Sean Connery.
I know.
Indeed. Indeed.
Indeed.
So he's joined us to do a part of the podcast we're going to be trying to make as sort of something we're going to do from time to time, or something that'll be regular, which is going to be a live script reading. And I decided to choose today a script from Batman the Animated Series that went unmade, which is called Lo the Creeper. And the Creeper was actually a character that was created by Steve Ditko and Don Siegel, which first appeared in Showcase number 73. But this script was actually written by Jerry Conway, who worked for DC Comics, but he also was known for writing the story that was the death of Gwen Stacy for The Amazing Spider-Man. There's also the teleplays by Marv Wolfman, who wrote Crisis on Infinite Earths, as well as The Return of Optimus Prime. But the script was written in 5/4/92, which I'm imagining this was probably intended for like the second season, but it never got made. And the Creeper actually didn't get introduced into the series till about 1998. So I thought it would be fun for us to do a quick scene from it, which I'll be voicing Batman. Jamie's going to be doing Roland Daggett, as well as a few of the other characters, and Kevin is going to be the Creeper.
Yes, I think I'm going to switch over so I can hear you guys a little bit better. You sound like you're very far away. I can hear you
Okay.
just fine, but I want to be a little bit closer sounding than you guys do.
Okay.
So I don't want to. It's an audio thing with me. I just want to make sure I'm at least next to a microphone instead of a mile away. I guess I can just get closer. This is fine.
Yep.
This
No, you
is
sound-
fine.
You sound fine, man.
Okay, good. All right, let's
Okay.
go. I'm good.
All right. So interior Batmobile. Batman thinks. The Creeper plays itsy bitsy spider with his fingers. At the masquerade, they thought I was their boss. That means they were looking for someone dressed as Batman. The Creeper leans back with a self-satisfied smile.
Betcha I know.
Batman looks at him skeptically. Exterior, street corner. The Batmobile screeches to a stop next to a coin-operated newspaper vendor. The Creeper leaps out. He stops, looks vexed.
One problem with being a superhero: no pocket change.
Another angle. Batman gets out, flips the Creeper a coin. He crosses it in front of the car as the Creeper inserts the coin and pulls out a paper. On paper, the Creeper turns to an inside page. Below headline, Celeb Crowd Wayne's Charity Function, is a picture taken in Act 1 of Daggett, in costume with cowl pushed back and Gordon. Roland Daggett. Two-shot. Batman turns to the Creeper. Yachts is a chemist. I know where Daggett's hiding him. New angle. The Creeper tosses the paper in a nearby trash basket.
Yowza, yowza! Come on, Gate. Let's ambulate.
No, this is no job for an amateur. Batman heads off screen. The Creeper is indignant.
Who you calling an amateur? Hey, I'm talking to you. Oh, all right. Be that way. But you're off my Christmas list.
Cut 2. Exterior, street, night. The Batmobile zooms past camera. Batman driving. Crouched on the rear bumper is the Creeper.
I'm a bad boy.
Wipe 2. Exterior, Daggett's chemical plant, night. Dark, massive deco. A sign on the roof says Daggett's Chemical.
Wake him up. He's no good to me this way.
Interior, laboratory, establishing. Pan across a 2-level football-sized dungeon with 2 thick columns as building supports. Side-by-side steel chairs are in the center of the room. The laboratory is filled with chemicals, with chemical paraphernalia, workbenches, etc. A group of people is in the office. Okay. Interior office, on group. Yates lies unconscious on the couch. A doctor listens to his heart with a stethoscope, then looks up at Daggett.
I'm sorry. It appears he suffered a stroke.
Exterior window, looking inside. Daggett looks out. The smokestacks are reflecting in the window. Behind him, Chick and Wilbur enter the office door.
Unfortunate. I hoped to persuade him to perfect his formula.
He turns and faces Chick and Wilbur.
But I may have to test it as is.
Boss, that yellow guy in Batman found us.
Interior building, on Daggett. Angry, he grabs Chick.
You imbeciles!
Chick is scared out of his wits. New angle. A nasty smile snakes across Daggett's lips. He releases Chick.
I know a way to make it up for your mistake.
Daggett walks towards the camera and past it. The 2 thugs follow, push in tight on their worried faces.
Doctor, I believe we can begin testing now.
Wilbur and Chick, strapped into the chairs. Daggett watches as the doctor holds up a hypodermic needle.
We couldn't quite replicate Yaz's formula. His notes were incomplete, but I think we came close.
Chick.
Oh, it's like she leans down.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed my line. She leans down beside Chick, who is visibly frightened.
Doc, well, what's that stuff gonna do? Make you stronger and faster than you've ever imagined. If it works.
She brings the needle down. OS. Chick winces. Angle favors Wilbur. She moves over to Wilbur. Her body hides the use of the needle. Favor Daggett. The doctor turns to her medical bag and drops the hypo in it. Ah! We're supposed to both yell. Chick and Wilbur, I figured I did. Ah! The doctor and Daggett wheel about and stare off screen, horrified. Smash cut 2. Exterior, Daggett's Chemical. Rear entrance, night. The Batmobile is parked with its back towards us. The Creeper peers around the car towards Batman, who pushes open the door and disappears inside. The Creeper follows on exaggerated tiptoes. Cuts to interior, corridor, night. Batman moves down the corridor. He reacts to what he hears. Wilbur and Chick scream. Ah! Ah! Batman runs forward, abandoning silence. On door to lab. Batman reaches the door and smashes through it. Interior, laboratory. Daggett and the doctor run to Batman, who is nonplussed by this.
Batman! Thank goodness. Help us!
Favor Batman. He reacts at what he sees off screen. His eyes widen and shot. Reverse angle. Chick and Wilbur smash through the office partition. They are now huge, misshapen mutants. Think Rondo Hatton, the other creeper. Ugh! Good God. Wide angle, the room. Wilbur and Chick lunge towards the frightened doctor and Daggett. Their voices are guttural growls, almost unrecognizable as human.
Daggett.
You did this to us! Daggett pushes the doctor towards Chick and steps back.
He did it!
No, please don't.
Batman, traveling, leaps over the desk and body slams Chick. The doctor staggers off screen. Chick slams into the back column. Some bricks shake loose on Batman. He moves around the column. In BG, Wilbur shambles at him. Closer. Suddenly, Chick's hand crashes through the column behind Batman, grabbing him. The column falls apart as Chick lifts Batman over his head.
It hurts.
Angle includes doorway. The creeper leaps into the room. His eyes widen in shock.
Oops. I'll come back when you're not busy.
Suddenly, Batman's body slams into him from off screen. Angle past oversized desk. Wilbur is about to smash a generator down onto the cowering Daggett. Suddenly, the creeper leaps into the scene. His legs wrap around Wilbur's neck.
Boy, I'll bet the ladies sure go for a looker like you.
Closer, creeper. He pulls on back Wilbur's head, forcing the latter to stagger backwards towards the second column. Wilbur still holds the generator. Daggett runs off screen.
Mr. Jones, I'm here to take Mary Noel to the prom.
Creeper leaps off Wilbur as he and the generator falls onto the column and cracks it. More bricks and stone collapse. Creeper?
And maybe we'll, go on a rampage and pillage the village.
He turns and reacts to something off screen.
Bats? Incoming ugly?
New angle. Chick stomps towards them. Batman and Creeper dive off screen, sideways. On Creeper. He lands nimbly. Debris begins to shower from above. An ominous rumble announces that the ceiling is giving way. The Creeper looks up. The Bat Grappler whips into shot around him and yanks him off screen.
Whoa!
On window, Batman stands at the railing. He yanks the Creeper into shot.
That was great. I love vaudeville.
Come on, idiot! Wide angle. They both dive off screen, out of the window, as the entire ceiling collapses. Exterior, chemical plant, night. Part of the building collapses in a cloud of dust and masonry. On Batman and Creeper. Watching the OS destruction. It's over.
Think any of them got out?
If I know Daggett, he had some kind of escape route ready. Closer on them. They turn and regard each other. Creeper raises his hand for Batman to shake.
You know, Bats, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Batman hesitates, then raises his hand. The Creeper once again yanks his hand back.
Or maybe not.
Another angle. The Creeper turns and dashes OS into the night. Batman watches a moment, annoyed, yet impressed, as we dissolve too. And that should do it.
Nice.
Nice.
I liked it.
Yeah.
I suddenly forgot that I was doing girl voices when I was reading. I was like, oh shit, I was supposed to do a girl doctor voice. And I was like, oh shit, that's right. Yeah, dude, that's why I got like so confused, because I was like, oh shit, they're both supposed to be girls. And then I already did a girl, like Harley Quinn type voice, and now I'm supposed to do another girl voice. And oh shit, I forgot.
Oh, you guys should have told me. I could have jumped in with some of those.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Didn't even think about it. But it was a first try. You know what we're probably going to be doing for a lot more of the shows is these live readings.
Yeah. Oh.
I still
Cool.
think we should do like a really dark, really disturbing scene, but do them in silly, crazy characters. I still want to do Fozzie Bear at an AA meeting. I don't know why.
And this is what you folks get to look forward to on the Mental Suppository. Apparently,
right.
somebody wrote The Great Gatsby as a Muppet script.
Really?
So, yeah, I read an article on it.
Huh.
And this is coming off. Somebody did a video
Who
of the
played
Muppets.
Gatsby?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look at it again. But this comes off the heels of somebody doing a video of the Muppets version of 1984.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which is on
That's
the heels
another-
of the thing I posted those photos from, where people were saying, take a movie, keep one character, replace all the rest with Muppets, and instead of just posting my answers, I did actual pictures of them instead, and I took the
Nice.
thing and took everybody out like Kurt Russell and put all the rest of us. Yeah, that was fun.
Hollywood's next leading man. Animal.
I figured it'd be Statler and Wardolph. On behalf of Jamie, Kevin, Andrew, Cam, and myself, thank you for tuning into this week's episode of The Mental Suppository. Next week, we will be talking with author, scriptwriter, novelist, and game designer Flint Dilley about his recent book, The Game Master, which is a fly-on-the-wall look at writing for television in the 1980s, as well as discuss the episode 5 Faces of Darkness, which was the first of a 5-part episode from the 1986 series of Transformers, as well as talk about the darker tones of that series, and talk a little bit about the movie that almost was Transformers the movie. Until then,
I knew I'd disturb you.
The Mental Suppository has been produced by Brett Herholtz and Jamie Billings and distributed by M The Media Project. Theme music generously donated by Mr. B, the Gentleman Rhymer. Visit his webpage at gentlemanrhymer.com. We would love to hear from our fans. Email us at mentalsuppository@gmail.com.